Welcome to Go From Contact to Contract. I'm Judy Bradt with Summit Insight, and my guest is Neeld Wilson. Let's jump in. Summit Insight is a professional consulting company. We specialize in helping companies who want to grow their federal business. For us, and I hope for you, sales and marketing are acts of service. We give these webinars as a way to build community, help support your success, and open the door to more conversations. And I hope that those conversations start right in the room, right here and now. If you have questions that we don't get to by the end of the session, email me and I will promise that you'll get an answer or a referral to the resource that can help you. And so I'm here to bring you the best of my 36 some odd years in the federal arena and help you focus, connect, and win. There are three keys that all of that time I've learned that successful companies master: focus, connection, and consistency. And that is the core of our practice, our activities, and our communications with all of you. This is the third in a webinar series, and other ones that you'll want to catch that are going to be available on demand are finding the right federal opportunity and how to find the right federal buyers. You'll be able to find those and links to those on my website. Today, we're talking about the journey from contact to contract. Here's what we're going to cover: how to turn first bids and losses into wins. Neeld is going to tell us about, I think there's about 4 or 5 winning journeys from contact to contract. You're going to really unpack which people are key to winning contracts, how industry association involvement can also drive wins, when to consider joint ventures, ways to leverage contract vehicle awards, going from in to win, a journey that Neeld is on right now, and he's going to share what he's doing and how. I asked him to tell us what are the 3 worst mistakes that he made and how can we avoid those. And you're going to get practical, repeatable steps. And so with that, please participate actively. Use the Q&A box. If you've got a question, use the icon for raising a hand so I can come around and you'll be able to come on live mic and ask your question. You're going to get a survey afterward. Please respond, and there's going to be a follow-up email you're going to get about an hour after the end of the session, and that's going to include some links and the opportunity to book a call. And so this is being recorded, and you're going to be able to get a copy of the recording as well. So with that, get out your notebook. Plan to take action. At the end, I'm going to ask you, what action are you going to take as a result of what you've learned here today? And so with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest, Neeld Wilson. He's a Florida native who served the United States Navy between 1975 and 1986. He graduated from the University of Florida in 1986 with a Bachelor of Science in Geology, and he's a geotechnical field geologist he started out with soil and material engineers. We were talking about this before we logged on. He said, if you want to be successful in GovCon, it really makes sense to learn on somebody else's nickel and work with somebody else first. And Neeld only did that, started his own company, went back out and worked with somebody else, and then restarted a company. So it's been a really interesting different kind of revolving door. He became a licensed professional geologist. He's been a building contractor and pollutant storage systems contractor in 1994. Then his company got sold to Soil and Material Engineers in 2001, where he built the geotechnical department before going to a larger company, MacTech, which has expanded a lot. But entrepreneurship was in his soul. And so he launched GATOR Engineering and Aquifer Restoration, go Gators, and has been verified and certified since then with Veterans Affairs and SBA as a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. And he's been honored by Northrop Grumman as Supplier of the Year for environmental services associated with the Space Coast industry. In 2017, he was awarded the Society of American Military Engineers Medal for industry government engagement and advocacy to eliminate self-certification for veteran-owned businesses. He was the 2017 Environmental Business Journal's Gold Award winner for business achievement, and the Orlando Business Journal in 2014 gave him the inaugural award for leadership and community service for veterans of influence. We are honored that you are with us, Neeld. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Judy.
So tell us about your company today, about Gear today. How big are you in terms of revenue, and what proportion of your revenue today comes from federal contracting?
Well, today our company has grown quite a bit in the past several years, many years, 17 years in this business, the second business, as you pointed out. And currently, we're running between 4 to 5 million in total revenues for the year of 17 people on staff. And so that, and our predominant amount of work is it's spread out. We're very diversified. Most small businesses are, because you need to find the niche that suits you best, that you can work best in. And not only do you technical, but environmental engineering. Also, we do architect engineering design and design build work. So when you get into the architect engineering design and design build work, you're moving more into the federal government world, which is where we got started with the VA, doing the AE, that's architect engineer, design and design build work. So now today we have 2 large contracts. One of them is with the U.S. Navy. It's $30 million 5-year contract. And the other is with the state of Florida, which is a $50 million 10-year contract. So we have a lot of work in front of us to be done, and it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it very much. Those were big wins, and we were pleased to work with both entities, the state government and the federal government as well.
Wonderful. Now, we first met when I was down in Florida speaking for the Small Business Development Center, and that at that point, you were so frustrated. I remember the conversation we had. You said, I don't know what to do. I have spent the last of my money. I spent $65,000. I have gone to events in Alabama and Louisiana and Florida and Georgia. And he said, they're all saying, I love service disabled veterans. Oh, we got to award 3% of our dollars. And I got the goose egg. I don't know what to do. And I remember saying, well, Neeld, let's take a look and sort out these cards here. All right. You got some opportunities that are close to home. You've got Jacksonville Naval Air Station. You got NASA. You got a couple of Veterans Affairs hospitals close to you. Why don't you kind of sort out these business cards? Take the cards from the places close to you and make that your A list. Take all the rest of the cards, put them to one side, tell them you'll be back another day, and concentrate on just the people close to home. Because you're a mile wide, an inch deep, and none of these people cared you were alive. Nobody likes that, and it's an expensive way to live. And so, and you bid a job in Mobile, and you lost. Then what happened?
Well, the smart thing happens when I listened to you to go do a debrief. And that was something that when you move into the federal government world, it really is advantageous to know as much about the procedures that you need to follow when you're submitting a proposal. But not only that, if you lose a proposal, that you have an opportunity to go debrief and talk to the contracting officers and find out what it was that we didn't make. And so what I had done, which was a big mistake, I had taken a solicitation and I prepared my proposal parroting most of their words. And so if you don't mean parroting, I just took copy and paste. I copy and paste from their solicitation and I put it into my proposal, kind of talked about it a little bit and moved on. And that's when I came into the debrief. The person who gave me the debrief was really hard on me about that. But at the same time, she had done a fantastic job of marking up my proposal. It was red as if I had bled on it. And now the person who was with me, my engineering partner, he was fuming mad because he'd won contracts before with another firm, and he just didn't understand why they weren't going to award it to us because he thought it was great. Well, I took it back and said, well, these are great comments. I need to follow these comments very clearly. And from that point on, our proposals have been on top.
Wonderful. And I remember that when the conversation we actually, you said, well, gee, we never heard of you. We liked you, but you weren't really quite ready for prime time. But did they point you to something else that they encouraged you to put a next bid in on?
Well, they always encourage you to always bid because they'll finish every one of their emails back to you or notifications back to you. Please continue to pursue these opportunities. But they had told me that what I was doing was as an environmental engineer, and my background was in environmental engineering, to go after the prime contractors who are with the large government entities like Army Corps of Engineers, the Navy, and et cetera. Go after those people, knock on their doors, and sell them your goods. Well, I had done that a long time, but they also mentioned that you look into the VA, because the VA sets aside more than 3% to disabled veterans. And so I never thought about that. And the very first job that came up right after that was right in my wheelhouse that I had looked at and won that first job.
Nice. So talk a little bit. So how long was it after the first loss that you bid another one?
Oh, right away. I don't waste any time. When there's a solicitation comes out, I go after them right away. I don't ponder too often because one thing is practice will make perfect. But if I lost, I want to learn from what the losses were and develop on that and keep improving on my product. So it was, I probably proposed today, I would say I proposed on probably anywhere from 10 to 15 a year.
So you got the debrief in Mobile and they said, look for VA. And there was a job in the VA Medical Center in Bay Pines in St. Petersburg. Talk about that job and what you learned there.
Well, as you mentioned early on, my background is underground storage tanks, pollutant storage contractor, a building contractor, and a professional geologist. Now, this solicitation called for the removal and replacement of the underground storage tanks, the dispenser, the island, the gas station at the VA hospital in Bay Pines. And so when I prepared my proposal was based on what we would do, how we would go about doing the work. And apparently, no one else did that. Now, the contracting officer called me up and says, your price is way too high, but you're the only person that seems to know what you're talking about. So they awarded it to us anyhow. And that's how I started on that very first contract, because my proposal was so well written, to the point.
You also got fired.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so there was something I learned along the way, too. Now, I knew from my classes that I had taken, the ones that you had recommended, the B2B, business to business, and business to government classes that we took. And you'll learn a lot there. You need to go to those places. You need to learn. You need to stick with Judy because she'll point you in the right direction to get you into the places you need to be going if you haven't thought of them already. But in this case here, we had, and I understood what was happening because I worked in the underground storage tank for many years. So I know that when you pull an underground storage tank out, 75% of the time you're going to find contamination. That's just typical. Most gasoline stations have a leaking underground storage tanks or dispensers, but there was nothing in the solicitation that mentioned anything about environmental concerns. So our proposal was based on just removing and replacing the things that were in the scope of work, the tanks, the dispensers, and the gasoline station. And so when we popped the lid off the top of those tanks, the contamination was everywhere. So now if you go to your classes, you learn that you have to let the contracting officer stop. There's a change order coming, and then you have to be prepared to submit a change order within 3 days. So you got to be ready to go when these things happen. They don't want to wait. They like to keep the time clock running. They want to go and get the work done. And so what had happened there is that I submitted a proposal to remove the contaminated soil. Well, you just don't remove the contaminated soil and set it off into the woods. It has to go into, be tested. It has to go into specialized trucks. It has to go to a specialized landfill or a burn facility. And those things cost a lot of money. And so when I had estimated the amount of soil and the amount of groundwater that need to be pumped out in order to put the new tanks in, the cost was $195,000. Now the contracting officer came unglued. He came out to the job site and says, you are fired. I see what you're doing. You're trying to pull the wool over our eyes. He was very upset. Now the contracting officer's representative, the COR, he said, well, hang on a second. Let me talk this out and we find out what's going on. So I broke out everything that we did, and they went ahead and went with us, and we continued to doing the work, which I would not do today. If you got a change order, don't start doing the work without their approval because it's going to be your dime, not theirs. But fortunately, I was working with some people that, understood I was trying to do the right thing. And so we had, out of our pocket, pulled out all that soil and all that groundwater, $195,000. And I just waited and waited and waited for the money. And it took a long time to understand that that amount of money is way more than what they had proposed for that particular solicitation. So they had to go back to prior year's funding to get that money. They go back to prior years to find these projects where the work didn't get done or finished, and they had those extra funds. And then they bring those funds forward into this new contract. And so the contracting officer all along the way was always kind of giving me a little grief about this, how it really kind of stuck in his side. He says, I'm going to guarantee you legal's going to get involved with this. Everything's going to be audited, and this is just going to create a problem. Fortunately, as Judy has explained earlier, as I was in the industry for a good 10 years before all this happened. So the state of Florida requires all this documentation. You got to document this, 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 and this, and this. So I just went ahead and followed that process. And when I turned over my final report, he saw what I had. I had every ounce of soil was covered, every drop of water was covered, every manifest was covered, where it went to, and who did it, and how they did it. And the legal department never came up. Nobody ever came at. Matter of fact, he was so pleased that in his recommendations at the end of it, his assessment was that I will pick no other environmental person except for this one.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was very pleased with the work. Yeah, and we solved the problem. And not only that, but we got him a no further action, which means you have no more contamination. So that's off their list. You don't have the state of Florida chasing you down anymore. And I have done that 2 or 3 times more at Bay Pines. I've solved a lot of their environmental problems by doing it correctly.
Wonderful. So you got to the right place. You wouldn't quite do it the same way again, but everybody wanted to get the job done and work together, which then what that is really a testament to strong relationships, but also you come with a truckload of solid experience, and all of those things work well together. Your winning factors absolutely include your technical expertise and your integrity. You could stand on saying this is the right thing. Going back, having some idea of exactly how to thread the rules, you might do it in a different order, but you did the right things, which is great. I want to take a second because we want to map out the contract relationships here, because we talk with our clients about the players at all the layers. And so in these 5 layers, where were the people that you worked with the most?
The contracting officer's representative, the COR. They're going to work with those.
Contracting officer's representative, they're actually part of the end user layer. They are in the end user. They're stuck with the consequences of choosing you, but that person speaks contracting, and they're the liaison or the industrial interpreter between end user land and contracting land. The contracting officers, contracting officers, contracting specialists have the legal authority to award the work, and they have that accountability for was it done right, were the laws and the rules followed. So those were the 2 biggies. Was in this particular instance, was the small business specialist involved at all?
No.
Yep.
Not at all.
Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're not. And sometimes they're helpful. Sometimes you never even talk to them. You win the work, you do the work, it's over. And you did this as a prime. So you didn't have anybody at the industry layer involved in this case, correct?
Right, correct. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I had already all the relationships I had developed over the years I brought into this project. So I knew the subcontractors in and out. I knew what the subcontractors were doing. I know how they were supposed to do it, what they were doing wrong when they were doing it, et cetera. So I had my eyes on it. One of the things that they did point out to me was the Corps pointed out to me, the Corps, COR, contracting officer representative, is that I was on the job every day. He says a lot of the contractors that get the projects, they show up, they give it to the subcontractors doing the work, and they walk away, and you don't see them again for weeks. Well, I can't do that. The liability is in my hands. The liability is on me. I am the contractor. It's my job to do it right. And you can't do that if you're not watching your subcontractors, because they can run you afoul very quickly.
Mm-hmm. So the industry layer included, you had subcontractors yourself. You were the prime, but you had people you were working with. So your industry layer was actually really important. But
Yes.
in this case, you were the prime. And so the 3 most important layers for you were the contracting layer, the end user layer, and your industry layer. And you were leading your industry layer. And so the head of the VA Medical Center probably wouldn't know you if he tripped over you in the cafeteria line, but you know that the water's clean and the place is environmentally safe because of the work that you did there.
Yes.
And somewhere there's a small business specialist who got to put a bean in the jar because you're a service disabled veteran and you did the work. And so that's how the contract map worked in this case. It's critical to know who your players are at all the layers, and the more of them that you can engage, the more support that you have. And so I encourage people to map out their contacts everywhere. Now that took you over next up, I think, to After St. Petersburg, you had a win with storage tanks in Gainesville and Lake City, $1 million contracts. Talk about those.
Well, the past performance that I got from the contracting officer at Bay Pines, which he says I'll never use anyone else except for him for my environmental services. The people at Gainesville and Lake City were looking for someone to take care of their storage tanks. And so they, I don't know where they get their information from. Maybe you can tell me, but they have something on site where they can go to either website or some place where they log into and find out who's been doing the work on their job sites. And they talked to the Bay Pines people and said, hey, who did you use over there? And he said, hey, this is the person you want to use. So there wasn't even a competition. We got the project right away from both of those projects for $1 million. That's correct.
So that was awarded as a sole source based on your SDVOSB status?
On experience too. Yeah,
And
it was
experience.
predominantly on experience. It wasn't, the VA is going to go to the service disabled veterans predominantly. And unless it's something outside their capabilities, but about, I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% of their work goes to disabled veterans. And that's
And the
not,
law says that Veterans Affairs must consider vets first. That's
that's
the
right.
law.
That's
And
correct.
that's another reason why that companies also team with service disabled veteran owned companies and put together solid teaming agreements, often under the aegis of a mentor protege relationship. So I'll put down a note here and say that if whether you're doing business with Veterans Affairs or somewhere else, and you want to be able to access opportunities that the data might show the agency you want to do business with routinely awards to veteran-owned businesses, then teaming is not a do-it-yourself project. Make sure that you have great legal counsel who can help you structure a legitimate teaming arrangement and make sure that you negotiate work share. We're down in the weeds. I want to come back up, and the kinds of things that distill out of the experience in Gainesville, you really came down to relationships and referrals from great past performance. That customer you had in Bay Pines wanted to tell his friends,
Yes.
wanted his friends to be successful. And so that's really important. And so did they call you or did you call them?
They called me. They called me.
Wow.
Yeah, they have a database they go to, but they also told me that when contracting officers get together occasionally, because there's changes in their contracting rules or regulations and things they need to update, they also talk. They do a lot of talking. They say, hey, who do you work with on something like this? I know this person. I know that person. And we got three more sole source awards after that.
Mm-hmm.
And not
Wonderful.
with storage tanks, because they saw that we were following the solicitation, we followed the rules, the verbs, the words, and this, that, right on down the line. We did everything that was required in the solicitation to follow, and they saw that we were doing it correctly. So we were awarded water tower design build to replace and fix it. We were awarded boiler tanks, boiler systems, and also water distribution systems right after that.
Wonderful. Now, you've talked about how religiously you go through contract notices on SAM. It's not the only element, but it's really important. But even when you first hear about an opportunity through sam.gov, growing federal business takes more than price and more than really phenomenal technical experience and great past performance. It also takes relationships. And so thinking about the players at all the layers, which layer or which role are the relationships most important and powerful for you in your wins?
Well, the ones that you really contact are going to be two different places. That's the contracting officer and your subcontractors.
Mm-hmm.
You really need to focus on both those entities, because you're not only bringing yourself, you're bringing somebody along with you, and you have to be able to sell that. And if you're going to sell that, you're going to have to sell it to the contracting officer. And if your contracting officer understands everything you're doing and understands that you understand it, they're more likely to select you.
A question. How important are the relationships with the end users, the project engineer, the core? Do you ever meet them, and where in the process do you meet them? I lost your audio. Say again. Your audio is gone away. can't hear you. Nope. Now your mic is gone. There, you're back, I think.
Ah,
Okay.
there you go.
Yeah, you're good. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you're gone again. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Try again. I got no audio from you at all right now. Can you reconnect your audio? I've got no audio source for you right now. Can you hear me? Okay. One second. Oh, there, you're back.
Yeah.
Talk.
So,
Yeah,
I'm not touching anything.
good. All right. So,
All right.
at what point do you meet the people in the end user layer? Is
Right.
there?
Well, you typically meet those people after you won the contract. And what you will find out when you meet the contracting officer's representative, they have a lot of work to do and they cover a broad spectrum of disciplines. And so it could be underground storage tanks to water towers. And typically these people come into the industry or work for the entity that they're working for, the government, and they maybe bring a certain skill, like they're a plumber, or maybe they did electrician. But because of the need for manpower at that level, they're elevated up to become the contracting officer's representative. Now they're just out to make sure you follow the scope of work, that you do what you're supposed to be doing, etc. But typically they do not understand what you're talking about. So I find that my best relationship with these people, I learned that quickly, was to educate them as I went along.
Oh, your audio just went out again. Sorry.
I hear you.
There. Yep, you're back. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not touching my stuff here, so I'm hands
Okay.
free.
All right. Sometimes it's an internet thing. You talked about getting to know your core, Bobby Kennedy, who then introduced you to other engineers, and that led to your referrals for your other projects.
That's
And so,
correct.
contracting officer's representative is really almost your super end user, and it's a really great person. Whether you find them, and sometimes you can find them even before the solicitation is written, let alone before it drops. They're a really powerful champion. Um, and so, talk about your U.S. Army Corps of Engineer contract in Louisville. How did that come about? And that was a subcontract. They found you somewhere on some small business database, and they called you.
That's right. And I was actually, it's kind of funny. Maybe it's not funny, but I usually go out and play golf every once in a while. And I found in the early days, for some strange reason, when I went out to play golf, that's when I got a phone call. And that's when I got a phone call that you need to come here, you got a job. Hey, would you like to do this? Would you like to get this job? So I wouldn't finish up playing 9 holes. I would go right back in to go get that job. So it's kind of strange. So I was on the golf course and I got a call from this company in Minnesota. They had found me through the database and they said, you do geotechnical work? I said, yes, we have a project with the Army Corps of Engineers in their recruit training facilities. And so we got their projects down in both Florida. One was down in Fort Myers, the other was in Sanford. We did a lot of work for them and they were very pleased with it. And that went into the past performances as well.
Mhm, mhm. And so actually it's not that you met people on the golf course and you won the work, but for some reason getting out of the office, taking a break, and getting some fresh air, and for some reason having a little bit of balance didn't hurt you at all.
No, I mean, I'm used to it because in my industry, emergencies either happen on Friday late or it happens
Mhm.
on holidays. I don't know why that is, but I have experienced it so many times where it's 5 o'clock afternoon, we have an emergency, or it's Thanksgiving, I got to go somewhere. So that's my industry. That's not everybody's industry, but I was used to it being called up and, go ahead and take off and go get something.
And you're also in the line of a place where you get a lot of heavy duty weather comes in. You're coming in, June means hurricane season is starting, and Florida can be in for some really tough times. Now, you once said to me that you consider your journey in federal contracting as a self-taught PhD. there wasn't any fast track. There was a lot of hard work and determination to get where you are today. Which of your federal contracts taught you the most?
Wow. I think the two of them, that first Army Corps, which they gave me the red ink all over my proposal, that was very important. And then the Bay Pines, where I spent $195,000 out of my pocket, not knowing I was ever going to get paid. I learned a lot from those two. And I think those two would probably propel me forward more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it. And so with Louisville, the winning factors were that you had current SDVOB registration in the supplier database and technical expertise and outstanding past performance. With key lessons on the road, with the AE design build, you said the CO said your number wasn't the lowest, but your presentation was the best. You obviously know what you're talking about. And for that one, all of those things, those winning factors, you said you had to be prepared for changes in the acquisition strategy as well. Sometimes the way they start saying they're going to buy something isn't what happens. There was one project and then it was going to be lots of projects and then it completely stalled out. What was happening with that?
Well, I think that's pretty much government. The government has funding and they have a limited amount of funding. And sometimes that funding gets pulled away from them for something else. And so some projects will disappear. And you have to be, you just can't count on that. Even when you win a contract and you have submitted your cost and you're waiting for them to say notice to proceed, time can go by. Matter of fact, I have 3 of those going on right now. Something is occurring, which, I don't spend my time going chasing down the whys and wheres. I have other things to do, but something is occurring at the government level right now where a lot of funds are being pulled out of the VA. Many of our contracts, even though we won and we submitted a cost for it, they have not been noticed to proceed. And when I follow up with each one of them, they all 3 have been canceled for funding. So funding's been pulled away from them. One of them was a very large job in Indianapolis. It was a very nice job. And what we find, and I'm straying off line here a little bit, but for people who are in the federal government, is that typically these solicitations come out, they'll estimate, the government's estimate for doing this work is X. Now, this particular project, the estimate was 700,000 plus. All right, so we went up to do a field investigation. I want to put my hands and my eyes on what we're going to do, so I know what it is we're talking about. And when I walked around and saw the facility, then I went back to the contracting officer and says, there's no way you're going to be able to do this for this amount of money, what you want to do. Well, this is what we really want to do. We want to do all this, we want to do all that. I said, well, we can give you an estimate for what that's going to cost. Please do. So we did. Now the estimate went from 700,000 plus to a little bit over 2 million. A big difference. Now, for people out there getting ready to get into the federal government, looking at these cost estimates, this is a way that they keep your costs lower. So, in other words, their estimate may have been based 2 years ago. Now, they haven't factored in the inflation of the 8% and the 9% for the last couple of years. And then it's not being revisited because they don't have time to do that. They got so much work on their plate, they can't keep up with that kind of stuff. But also at the same time, they're looking for the lowest value you can get, because now you've got to go in and say, can I do this project for $700,000? You either accept it or you turn your back and go away. Or you say, hey, let's talk about this and see if we can't raise that value up. And sometimes you can and sometimes you cannot. You just have to go after it.
And when they want the Cadillac on a Volkswagen budget, then what do? Presumably you don't say, sure, we're going to make a Cadillac out of popsicle sticks. What do you do?
Everything is communication. It's always communication is the number one key in anything you do, whether it's in the government or with your wife or with your husband or with anyone else you're talking to. Communications, clear communications, state your point and you make it clear and then stand by it. And that's what we do.
So what's the Navy, the federal contract that you're the most proud of?
Oh, the Navy contract, because I'm former Navy, as you can tell. And I did 10 years in the service, and I've always wanted to get back with the Navy. I know they've got big problems with storage tanks. They got to fill up in big old ships and airplanes. So my experience was in that area, but I couldn't get a job as a prime contractor because they don't set aside their work to service disabled veterans. Now, let me qualify that by saying they're supposed to. The DOD is supposed to. All these agencies are supposed to, with the exception of the VA. meet a 3% requirement for set aside for disabled veterans. And so many of them, I've been tracking them from the very beginning, weren't even reaching 1%. And I don't know why that was all occurring, except that it was the SBA's way of handling it until we eliminated that issue a few years ago. That's what the IGE award was for.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's where you come into that particular picture there.
So how important were relationships in winning that Navy EMAC MATOC IDIQ?
Very important, because how that came about is a company, should say, have been doing a lot of Navy work. They've been doing it for years and years and years, and they saw this opportunity come out for service disabled veterans, all right? But in prior years previous to that, I've gone to the Society of American Military Engineers shows, which you've been to with me. And we've gone out and met with people, shook hands, gave business cards and et cetera, explained what we can do and how we can offer and help and et cetera. You're not expected to get work right from those shows. You're introducing yourself, you're selling your wares. Well, then about a year later, we get a call from these folks that, hey, there is a contract coming out from the Navy for service disabled veterans. It's a remediation contract, and that's what you guys do. Are you interested in joining us? Well, that sounds great. That sounds good. So I then created the joint venture that made us a service disabled veteran joint venture with this particular company, and that's how we won that contract.
Well, the involvement you had in SAMI was really important because you didn't just literally show up for the SAMI golf tournament. You also committed many years of time and effort as an advocate, including going to Washington, going to Capitol Hill, calling on members of Congress to advocate for third-party certification right across every federal agency for service disabled veteran-owned status. And so people got to know you, got to know what your passion and dedication looks like in their industry. And that left you top of mind when an opportunity came up. And that makes a big difference. And that is a key thing that those of you who are listening to this webinar can take away from this, because you will hear me say the value of association membership comes not from paying your fees, but from paying your dues. The commitment that you make, you picking something when you're involved with an association, that means that it's something you enjoy doing, something you're passionate about, something that's good for your business and good for the association. So you're not resenting the time you're showing up or expecting magical things to happen, but your efforts are going in the right place, and you care as much as the organization does about what you're putting your time and effort into. Commitments to associations, most of us can only afford to put in that time and sweat equity as well as our money to no more than 3 associations at the most. If you're a very small business, pick one. Associations love to have you as guests. You don't have to pay your money for a full membership to all of these things. They love to have visitors. Notice how you're treated. Talk to the people on the membership committee. See whether they're as enthusiastic about the organization as you would hope they would be. When you're in, make a multi-year commitment. Choose an appropriate level of membership. Most organizations have the individual membership and the company or corporate membership. Society of American Military Engineers has a very modest membership fee for corporate membership, and that is clearly the way to go in that organization, for example. Be part of the social media presence as well. Help tell the story. And the organization also in turn can help you with visibility when you're involved in those activities. Participate locally at the chapter level, and also or in SAMI, they're a post, but also at the national level. So volunteer and evaluate your association commitments annually. There's no point in just continuing to shell out money if your heart isn't in it and they're thinking they don't like you all that much either. You're not making friends there. It's just not a feel-good place. Organizations change over time. Sometimes the organization you thought, there's no there for me. People turn over, the mission shifts, something gets redefined, and suddenly that's an organization that it's really aligning well with now where you are and your company is. And so association commitment, all of us need to participate in some way. And so there's some great lessons learned there. Now, talk about the NSAFE joint venture and then how that industry commitment opened the doors.
Well, that's the one where we won the Navy contract where I created the joint venture for a service disabled veteran. And that has led into a company that they're one of the best companies I've probably run into a very long time. People are straight up, they're honest, they work with you, they're helping you. So I'm very fortunate that they came to me. But also that their relationships with the Navy. Their relationships have taught me many things. I am still on a learning curve because going from the VA style of business and to the veterans or the DoD Navy business style of business is a big, big, big change. And so I have been going through changes right now, and I'm learning. Every day is a learning thing for me. I find that I feel like I've always been in college ever since I got out of college, but I enjoyed that. I enjoy that work, and I work that work effort. So it's been very beneficial to me to learn the ins and outs of how to do it right with the Navy. And the contracting officer told us right away on the kickoff meeting, you're not going to get a 5-0 from me unless you're pulling the moon out of the sky. Now that's all you need to tell me is that, because now I am even more propelled to go out there and get that 5-0. And so I think they're realizing it now. They're very pleased with the work we're doing. As a matter of fact, they even push my emails out to their other engineering people, say, this is the way your contractors should be operating. So it's been very, it's been very nice. It's been very nice. I just got back from a few days of them patting me on the back. So that's always nice.
So why did you decide that joint venture rather than subcontract was the way to go?
The solicitation, the contract came out as a disabled veteran contract from the Navy. So you had to be a prime contractor.
So
So that's
if
you
so
can't.
NSAFE couldn't play if they didn't have the right service disabled veteran owned small business partner.
That's right. They're not a disabled veteran. They needed to
Okay.
find a disabled veteran. Not only that, not only find one, but find one that's willing to start a joint venture and lead the joint venture.
Mhm.
And they found
Got
one.
it. So do you have work share negotiated as part of that?
Actually, we do that with each and every task order.
Mhm.
So each and every task order is different. The first one we worked on was underground storage tanks. So I'm leaving about 75% of that work. I'm doing that. The next task order is stormwater, which requires stream restoration, creek restoration.
Mhm.
And so that's part of my forte. I'm a geologist, and so I understand fluvial systems, but I'm not a stream restoration person. So they're going to pick up about 70% of that, and I'll be doing 30% of that. So depending on the project and on the task order, we work out what our part is and what your part is as we go along.
It's critical to have work share and the process for deciding it built into your contract, whether it's a definitive contract award or it's an IDIQ. And so that might be a takeaway to those of you who are listening onto the webinar, to make sure that you talk to your lawyer about ensuring that the work share is properly built in and is appropriate for what you're doing. Once you win, and you were one of what, 5 companies on that IDIQ?
Correct.
And you won the first task order out of the gate, yes?
Right. Yes. The underground storage tanks, of course.
Right. Of course. So once you win, you've still got to build relationships. You're not just sitting waiting for the phone to ring. Now that you win the first, the base contract, what do you do to generate work? What are the things that you do to make sure that this is actually generating cash for you?
Well, you see, now this is what's called an EMAC, an Environmental Multiple Award Contract. So we have 5 different contractors, as you've mentioned, all right? So each time a new task comes out, it could be anything, they send it out to all 5 of us. And all 5 of us have the opportunity to do a site investigation, do a field investigation, do a study, or whatever we feel that's necessary to go learn more about that particular task order, and then put our proposal in. If your proposal wins, you get the job. So you have to do still it that way. Now, it's very important on the very front end. I've developed the relationships with the people at NAVFAC, Naval Facilities. I've already developed those relationships, and the word's getting spread around. So even yesterday, the day before yesterday, I saw the big problem for NAVFAC that they didn't even know existed. And it brought the environmental director of the Naval Stations Great Lakes to my site to talk to me about what we were seeing. And he was very happy with it. That particular person was the person that was in charge of the Red Hill cleanup in Hawaii. Maybe you all remember above ground storage tanks in Hawaii and Honolulu, where the tanks were leaking into the ground and was getting into people's drinking water. he was out there remediating that site. So once we got the meeting and he knew we had the same kind of background, we're simpatico. We're brothers now. So he knows he's got somebody that understands what he's talking about.
Got it. Got it. And so typically when you talk about players and layers, once you win the task order, then you actually meet all of the people in the end user layer involved in that task. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, you had to go to a kickoff meeting.
Mhm.
Post award kickoff meeting, or a PAC, P-A-K. So these are all these new
Ah,
terms I'm having to learn.
okay. Now, so you're going to be working with these people on this first project. To what extent do you then have independent relationships with the people in the end user layer? You can talk to them about other projects, things that are coming up, and by strengthening those relationships, that can be another source that helps you line up for future task order wins. Is that part of how you do it?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always selling. I'm always selling. So even when I was doing this work and that environmental director showed up, I was selling this work that's coming out right now. So there's two of them that are coming out right now. I demonstrated our experience as a team, what we can do as a team, and that we be the right players to work with them. And now they know that we know how to do it correctly. We might have a thumb up.
Got it. Hey, as we're kind of coming down to the end, what would you say, this is a tough one, are maybe the three worst mistakes that you've made on the road to being where you are, and what would you do differently?
Wow. Well, I think the very first one is that I brought legal in to fight an issue that was where the VA was, that the contracting officer's representative did not understand what we were doing with the plumbing system. And so he turned over his responsibility to the plumber.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the plumber doesn't know design drawings from specifications, and he does not know that specifications takes precedence over drawings. And so he kept pushing that your drawing shows this T-valve right here, and I want T-valves in every one of these lines. I said, well, no, that's not what the specifications call for. This is just a diagram. That's all that is. It doesn't connect to anything. It shows you what a T looks like. And I said, well, we're not going to do that because they wanted us to spend the money to go out and replace all those valves. So I brought in an attorney. And when the attorney came in, the very first thing that the VA did, they called up my bonding agent and they said, we're going to call your bond. And if you don't know what that means, is that when you do a construction project, you have to get a bond. So that means if you're working on a project for some reason you can't complete it, the client still wants the work done. So they'll call upon your bonding agent and they'll go to the bonding agent, and they'll find someone else that can do the work, and you're paying for that work from their end. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to wave the white flag and go ahead and put these T-valves in. But I've never, ever worked for that group again. I will not set foot on that location anymore. And this is the same location where I've gotten all the accolades and the kudos and et cetera for doing that work early on back at Bay Pines. But they have changed in guard. The old school people are gone, the gray hairs are gone, and those relationships were disappearing, and new people were coming on board that we had not met, and they had a little bit of authority, and they were trying to use it. And so that was a mistake. Next time I'll do it differently, that's for sure. Now, that was probably the biggest mistake. The second
That's
mistake
scary.
was learning about the doing the work before I had authority to do
Whoops.
work in a change order.
That's scary. I'm glad that turned out okay, and it might not have. So make sure that the work you're doing lines up with what's in the contract, and you don't make a move if it's not in the contract. Don't be nice.
Yeah, no, don't ever be nice, and
Not like
because
that.
they will ask, they will say, hey, can you do this for me? And it's outside the scope of work, and you say, no, I can't do it for you. Go
Ding.
talk to your contracting officer and then
Yeah.
let him.
Good job. And maybe three, mistake number three.
And I think after mistake 1 and 2, I better not make number 3.
Right. I hear you. So we've talked a lot about how important relationships are. If you're on this webinar, I'll be sending you a link to our players and layers methodology and our GovCon personas guide, so you can better sort out of the people that you know and which ones you don't know in the account where you want to win the business. What do they want? How do you talk to them? How do you build relationships with them? And there's material on my website. It's all free, lots of lessons and short videos on players and layers methodology, our proprietary process for supporting contract wins. The practical, repeatable steps that we distilled out of our conversation I think, are these. Win or lose, always get a debriefing. Even if you win, say, you don't know unless you ask, did you win by a mile or by a little tiny bit? If you won on a technicality and they can hardly wait to turf you out, and can hardly wait to terminate you at base year, and those 4 option years are never going to happen. You want to know that and find a way to continue to outperform and continue to get the base and the option years completed. Get the debriefing. It shows that you are humble and know that you can make mistakes and really want it to be all about them. Stand on your expertise, stand in your integrity. If you know there's a right way to do things, then get clarity on that. You can't afford to go do work that's not in the scope, but if you know that there's a right way to do it, keep communicating so your buyer knows that you're on their side and you want what they want, successful completion of the mission. Aim for outstanding CPARs, contractor performance assessment rating system. Neeld talked about being a 5.0, being a 5, exceptional performance. Every contracting officer has a different definition of what it is. I think you said pulling the moon out of the sky. That was what that looked like. Neeld went out and got himself a moon-sized rope and is busy trying to lasso the moon. He knows what he's got his goal set on. Always say, we aim to be exceptional. Map out and nurture relationships in the account. Know who is in what roles and where are you missing someone. Neeld talked about his discipline of daily, which for some people, there's enough opportunity daily, but regularly committing to reviewing sam.gov for best fit opportunities. But also remember, if you see something and it pops up, it's a major thing. It looks just like what you do. Better yet, it's set aside for a company that looks like yours, but you don't know the buyer and you don't know the budget and you don't know the incumbent and you don't know the history. Your odds of winning are in the single digits. So sometimes the smartest thing you can do is peel the contact information out of that thing and get to know that person in that organization for next time. Just because you see a notice, you don't know anything about the organization, you're actually not doing sales, you're doing market research. Be aware of that. As well, sometimes what the buyer needs, they need a bid for the file. The thing they most need is your lovely compliant bid, and you know and they know you're not going to win. But they need to look like they shopped. And sometimes, especially as buyers get toward federal fourth quarter, that's what they need. But make sure you circle back and give it your best shot. You're going to bid something that you intend to perform if you win, but also make sure that you're clear that you want to get a post-award discussion of some kind so you can learn. Make sure your online profiles are current. People found Neeld, among other things, because his past performance, his credentials, his profiles were up to date on SAM, on his website, any industry profile in an association membership. All of these things, update them at least twice a year and make sure that the information is correct and identical across these sites. There are contracting officers I've talked to that, let's say you have a doing business as and it's different from what's in SAM. They're saying, if they got 2 different company names, I'm not even going to call them. Anything looks like risk. You want to look as low risk as possible. The contracting officers say, if that's how the level of care they are taking to talk about their own company, what kind of care are they going to take about my mission and my tanks and my people? So how you do anything is how you do everything. Do make a modest investment in digital marketing and presence. Research shows that your buyers look you up 12 times online before they even think about calling you. 12 times. And so LinkedIn, critically important. It's not just a place to find employees. If you don't have a LinkedIn strategy, if you don't have a solid personal as well as corporate presence on LinkedIn, you got some homework to do. I'm happy to have that conversation with you or refer you to some of my partners who have built wonderful presence and results for my clients. Make a strategic industry association commitment. Pick one, go deep, help them, help yourself. And of course, be sure to leverage your small business certifications. Make sure that you have the certifications that you're eligible for, and look at ways that you can leverage them at the right time through whatever combination of mentor protege, if appropriate, and joint venture works for you. And footnote, joint ventures and mentor protege and teaming are not do it yourself. You're not going to pull an agreement off the internet. Get a qualified federal contracts attorney who has specialty and experience in what you do. So with that, the first small win can have a huge impact, not just in terms of money in the bank, but in terms of the lessons you learn and all of the relationships and referrals that build up. And so it's been your experience, Neeld, and that's the experience that we build when we're creating relationships here. So we covered a lot. We did what we said we were going to do, how to turn first bids and losses into wins, which people are key to those wins, how association membership is valuable, when to consider joint ventures, how to leverage those contract vehicle awards from in to win by continuing to build relationships with everyone you meet. We heard about top worst mistakes and practical, repeatable steps. So if you have questions, please put up a hand or a note in the Q&A box. We'd love to hear about those, but I'm going to pause for a second. Neeld has some linger time so he can answer more of your questions. I want to say thank you so much for sharing with such candor and generosity your experiences. I've learned a lot from listening to you, and we're going to be writing this up in a blog post. Neeld has other details of the stories that he generously shared, so you'll be able to read some of those as well. So time for action, real quick. Either put up a hand or put something in the Q&A box. What's your biggest takeaway or aha from our session today? I would just love to know what you found valuable. So by all means, let us know, or put up a hand. We would love to hear from you and hear your questions. In the meantime, you're going to get a survey. We'd love to get your answers. Please book a call. I would love to chat with you. We give these webinars as a way to build relationships and open conversations. And I hope that you'll steal a page from my book and consider whether or how a webinar program might do the same for you and your company. Resources. There's always resources for you. We have complimentary on-demand webinars. There are 2 more from this series. We had a series of 4 from last year. These are all filled with meaty stories and tips and strategies and tactics. I have a blog post on my website about how to do effective post-award debriefings and discussions. Here's the QR code. By all means, go tap into what's there and the other resources that are hanging off that blog post. A bonus that you're going to have in your follow-up note will be a link where you can get the GovCon Personas Guide, which includes who your buyer really is, what they care about, how to engage with them, and tips for success. That's free, and I can hardly wait to have you use it and make that a key to your success. My book, Government Contracts Made Easier, because easy is fiction. You can pick it up on Amazon. There's a book and a workbook. Thousands of companies have found it helpful, and many of the Apex accelerators, formerly known as PTACs, also give it to their teams and their clients and find it helpful. Neeld's story, 2 of them, as a matter of fact, are in that book. And I mentioned Apex accelerators. If you aren't already working with the Apex accelerator in your community, run, do not walk to the website. Find the one near you. Their help is paid for by your tax dollars. They are 50% sponsored by the Department of Defense Office of Small Business Programs and half by a local partner, often an economic development organization, a college, or a university. Their help is at no charge to you. They offer content, courses, contacts, coaching, consultation. If you haven't tapped them, I encourage you to look them up, see where the one is near you, see what services they offer, and get engaged. Many of the counselors are former contracting officers themselves, and they are there to help you win not just federal, but also state and local government business. So let us know the one near you and the experiences that you have. Finally, if for some reason you are in the Washington, D.C. area, Neeld says he goes out for golf, and for some reason that suddenly shakes everything loose in his universe. We do some unconventional networking. When I'm not doing government contracting, I'm a professional indoor rock climbing instructor. And since 2019, once a month, we invite federal employees and government contractors to get together and literally go up the walls with each other. This is so much fun. And here's the premise. All right, there's two. One is I don't golf. And so I wanted to spend more time doing something I love to do and see if I could bring some people with me. But government contracting is based on trust. And tell me what demonstrates trust more profoundly and faster than showing up in public in your underwear and putting your life in the hands of somebody you just met. That's what we do. We make wonderful friends. And this is on typically the last Thursday of the month, or this month it's the third Thursday to stay away from the holidays, at Sport Rock in Alexandria on Eisenhower Avenue near the Van Dorn Metro. There's the link. You can find out more about it. Here's why it matters. Even if you've never climbed before or don't know the ropes, we've got you. It is free for everybody who's through the door for the first time. Federal employees come, government contractors come. You get to meet each other, leave your assumptions at the door. You can also invite your whole team. It's turnkey team building built in. You can also invite a teaming partner. You can come with a colleague. You can come with a prospect. You can bring your kids. And so you're all welcome. Find out more about GovCon Rockstars, and a special shout out to our sponsors, Courtney Fairchild and Global Services. Global Services provides GSA schedule, contracting, consulting, and proposals. And Courtney sponsors our shirts. So you get to come be a rock star, have a shirt, tap anybody on the shoulder and say, could we climb together? It's a really cool thing. And that's actually where I'm going right after we wrap up this webinar. And so with that, we have a ton of fun and we'd love to see you. Summit Insight's a professional consulting company. We are all about federal business growth. Please check out our website. We'd love to have a conversation with you. Our programs are all wrapped around focus, connection, and consistency. You can see more about our programs on the website. If you've got more questions, we'd love to stay and answer your questions. When we close the recording, we're all about bringing you a life you love in a business you love for a country you love. Come on back, share the links, share the resources. We would love to see you back another time, and I'd love to chat with you. So I'll close the recording and we'll see you another time.